Do you feel emotionally connected to your plants? As if in the process of caring for them, they as well are caring for you? What about planty DIYs and thrifting for plant items? If I have your attention, then the Plants by Wade Lee podcast is for you. Join me, plant friends, as we dig deep and experience the magic of plants. Hi, plant people, and welcome to the third season of the Plants by Wade Lee podcast. I'm super excited and honored to bring Stephanie Rose, who is an award-winning author, garden expert, herbalist, alchemist, advocate from Vancouver, British Columbia, correct? And after facing your own debilitating illness, you found solace in gardening, and that really birthed garden therapy. I'm so excited to have you on the pod today and talk about your story. How are you doing today?
I'm so great, Wade. It's nice to see you. Your smiling face is like just so cheery. It's nice to see you.
Thank you so much. Likewise. I just saw some beautiful tulips that you showed me. I am so excited to talk to you about gardening. Yes, gorgeous.
Just picked these from the garden, and they are like I can't keep up with them.
It's amazing.
I love it. They're so beautiful.
Right?
I had to show Wade before we started.
Yeah.
Now everybody gets to see them.
I love it. Tell me a little bit about how this all started. You said that you became ill and then you founded gardening through being sick.
Yeah. So back in 2006, I was traveling through Europe, and when I got back, I got this headache, and the headache turned into about 7 years of me being completely disabled and recovering. The headache turned into me not being able to get out of bed for almost 2 years, for the better part of 2 years. And as I just slept off the first year. As the second year, I started to try to pull myself out of bed and do more activities. I was living in a little house in East Vancouver, and it had, a square of lawn in the front and a square of lawn in the back. And so I couldn't really go far or do much. So I decided to go outside and just see if I could learn how to garden and renovate my yards. And in the process, I completely rehabilitated myself. I mean, not completely, because I still have a disability and I still live with that every day, but it transformed my life. I mean, to say that gardening saved my life it sounds dramatic, but it's not an understatement. It completely transformed. I'm now able to work because I work as a garden writer. I'm able to just have that joy, that big smile that I get when I go and pick my tulip bulbs. So yeah, it's been quite an amazing journey since that first, bit in 2006.
But gardening really has been a major part of your life, even before 2006. Your mom, wrote very detailed journals about gardening, correct?
Yeah, well, she came to it in retirement as well. So actually, I didn't grow up gardening at all. I didn't have any sort of experience with it. She almost came into it around the same time I did when she retired, as many people do, or many people did back in the day. When she retired, she finally had the time. And they built a house on some land and started gardening then. And so she actually went back to school and started studying botany and entomology and all sorts of things just as a hobby. After, she had her master's in history and worked in the corporate world. So when she retired, she sort of like lived out her passions.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm holding one of your books. This is Garden Alchemy.
So it's a book, like a recipe book for your garden based on herbalism, based on plants as medicine. It's a really different way of sort of looking at our gardens. If we think about alchemists and the way that alchemists sort of researched the world, they looked at the natural world, they did experiments and observations, and then they wrote it down, took notes, they maybe used code, they maybe had some lofty goals of transmutation of metals into gold, that sort of thing, sort of highlights some of the things that make it, give alchemy its name of lofty goals, experimentation, learning through failures, and that connection with the natural world. So I wrote this book to bring together the idea of us putting our hands in the soil, learning about our gardens, learning about how plants grow from the plants as our teachers and as our allies. So taking those plants looking at what medicinal properties do they have? How can we work together with them? How can we make them into concoctions and elixirs, make our own soils? Look at all of the ingredients and become our own alchemists so that we can put together these recipes that you can use to grow a natural garden that thrives on its own.
Yeah, I love that. There's even a process to make your own worm castings,
Yes.
which is so cool. I love that. I actually was in the garden at work today and I was digging and I was like, are these the red worms that she's talking about? I think they are, which is so
Yeah.
cool that, that is a process that people are out buying, and spending lots and lots of money on these worm castings, and this is just happening naturally in our backyards. So this is such
Yes.
a good read. Different teas, and pest control.
Yeah.
I think that's super important, especially when you are having a garden that you eat, that you have more natural, organic pest control than just putting all these chemicals on our plants.
Well, it's a heck of a lot easier, that's for sure. I mean, if we're spending all of this time managing our gardens and there's insects and organisms that will do it for us, the mammals, all those things will do the pest control for us. Why are we wasting our time? I mean, think about the alternative. We all are starting to hear about the honeybee decline or native bee declines. And when we lose our bees, of course, who does the pollination? Is it us with a paintbrush? Is it drone bees? Like we need those honeybees. They are hard workers, or we need all bees. They're hard workers and they work for flowers. So, I mean, really, all we have to do is find the ways to invite them and support them and try to keep them healthy. And if we do that, then it's going to be a lot less work for us overall.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that. I had a guest the other day actually ask me, "Sir, do you ever see any bumblebees?" He's like, "I don't see any bumblebees in my yard anymore." And I was just like, "Wow!" So I've been on search, and I have seen a few, thank goodness. But the decline is really, you know, at stake here. So
Yes.
the importance of creating pollinator gardens for these pollinators is so important. And
So important.
you are uh, a award-winning leader in this kind of work, which is so awesome. So I'm so excited to talk to you about this. You transformed your entire front yard from a turf front yard to a wildflower garden. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would love to. It's one of the most amazing projects that I've done because the transformation was instant, almost instant. It took very, very little work on my end. When your, customer came to you and said that they didn't see any honeybees, I mean, or any bees. I keep saying honeybees. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine.
The word is stuck in my head today, but I mean all bees, native bees, mason bees, bumblebees. And so when I planted it, I mean, I have a yard full of bees. Actually, I have the most amazing selection of bees. Some that, are bee mimics, some that are these little sweat bees that are green, like brilliant green, so beautiful, black and white bees. Like it's amazing. So the transformation of my yard came from I bought this house 2 years ago. And again, little patch of yard in the front, little patch of yard in the back. And I've done this now a bunch of times. I keep going and renovating gardens with a permaculture perspective, so a regenerative garden. And so I looked at the lawn and I thought, okay, I don't want to deal with turf grasses, so I'm going to put in a lawn alternative mix. I got a wildflower mix, and honestly, I wasn't completely sure how it was going to turn out. I'm kind of that, like, I need to see it and live it in order to understand it. So as much as I researched what it would be like to do a lawn alternative, I wasn't quite sure. So in my backyard, I did one called the bee turf, which is a lot more turf grasses with some low growing flowers. It's got clover, it's got some little daisies, it's got things like that in it. The front yard is more of a like 12 to 18-inch tall wildflower garden that it does have some turf grasses in it in order to be a basis, and you could mow it. But it started with this succession of flowers. So all I did is I took the existing lawn and I put soil over top, nice composted soil mixed with sand so that it had some good drainage, raked it so that it was level, then sprinkled the seeds 3 times, February, March, and April. Just did it right before it rained. So every time I go out to do my seeds, I just do it before it rains. There's a week of rain, I go and I do some extra seeding. And then I just sort of walked away and let it do its thing. I then had this succession of all these amazing blooms, these little baby blue eyes, these 5-spot came first. So the whole lawn was just this puffs of baby blue flowers. And then the California poppy started coming up and it rose up with this brilliant neon orange, full of bees everywhere. Filling in was sweet alyssum. So as you walked into the yard, you would get hit with this aroma of these beautiful white flowers that were just full of bees. It was the most stunning and easiest garden I've ever planted. I mowed it 0 times because I didn't want to mow any of it. I actually ended up building a dry river through it with river stones in order to act as a rain catchment garden because I live in a temperate rainforest and we can get a lot of rain at certain times and then drought at other times. So I watered it 0 times as well because I had my downspouts from the house redirected to the garden. I have drought tolerant plants that can handle water and proper drainage. So the water would flow to the flowers when they needed it to germinate, and then they got nice deep roots to keep themselves well watered the rest of the year. Absolutely stunning. The only issue I would say, as I will share one issue, is that I had to look out my window and make sure I had about 5 to 10 minutes before I ever left the house because all my neighbors wanted to chat about the garden. So I don't mind that. I like connecting with my neighbors, but sometimes if I was in a hurry, I would be like, oh geez, there's people out there. I gotta sneak out the back today.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask you, Stephanie, is if your neighbors were appreciative of it or not used to native plants, and everyone's so used to having this nasty turf that is ruining our ecosystem. So I'm glad to hear that they enjoy it as well.
Yeah, it's neighbors have told me that they've been watching people struggle with the turf grass for the last 13, 14, 15 years that have lived in this house. And then they watched me transform it in a season and they couldn't believe it. They were just shocked. And it's really one of the prettiest spaces on the block right now. So
Yeah,
I'm really pleased. And the thing is, it just goes to show you that if we work with nature and then we find, like I'm providing a nice stopover place for pollinators. I have a couple of bee houses up on the fence right beside it. I noticed yesterday because solitary bees go in and then they cover up the little holes with mud. And I noticed that all the bees had left. So they're up and they're ready and they've chewed themselves out of the holes and they're ready to go and like live in the garden again this year. So it's just
that's amazing.
so
And so
lovely, the community.
for next year, will you have to redo this, or will it?
Oh, so that was last year.
Oh, that was
This
last year.
year,
Okay.
yeah. So this year I kind of took a little bit more time to seed. I didn't seed in February, March, and April. Well, I didn't seed in February, March this year because I wanted to see how much would have seeded itself and regerminated.
Yeah,
And it hasn't seeded itself as well as I had hoped. Or maybe it's just because I have so much wildlife that comes to visit the garden now that the birds have eaten so much of the seed that has fallen. So I waited a little bit longer, didn't see a ton of germination, and then I just seeded it late March or early April. I'm not sure, like just the last couple of weeks. It was just raining, so I went out there and I started a bunch of seeds.
yeah,
So
that's
it's going to be similar, but this year I'm adding to it because I'm so committed now to this wildflower component. I'm adding a few more different wildflowers to it. So it's not just, although it looks so pretty, this succession of blooms that were really similar. It's very calming to see that. But I wanted to try to include a bunch more cutting flowers in there this year. So I have plenty for the bees and I have plenty for me to cut and put into bouquets in the house.
that's amazing. And then the tulips, you added.
Yeah.
You have a tulip garden as well.
Well, I planted 15, this all started because I planted 1,500 bulbs in the fall of the very first year I moved into the house. So I moved in the summer. A few months later, I planted 1,500 bulbs underneath the grass that was here because it was a gift from the European Union. Well, it's a gift from flowerbulbs.com. They have a wonderful program where they help to promote the growers in the European Union. And so I was very lucky to receive these beautiful flowers, and I planted them 1,500 bulbs in this small area. And so I wanted to plant around them. So it wasn't just tulip bulbs. I had a naturalized carpet look of snowdrops, crocuses, daffodils, like mini little tete-a-tete narcissus, irises, anemones, just a nice mix of low growing spring flowers that look really nice and naturalized in a lawn. So those all came up again this year. Muscari, there's another one. Those all came up again this year, but I decided to really get a cutting garden going. So I planted 250 tulip bulbs wherever I could find a little bit of space. And now I go outside. I mean, there's new ones blooming every day. So I'm trying to cut them. My next job is going to be cut some of them prior to blooming, wrap them up and put them in the fridge to store them so that I'll hold them for when I want them to bloom. So I'm going to practice with that as
Ooh,
a
that's
strategy.
smart.
Yeah, because
So
I'd
you
like to be
take
able to
them out
give
of the
those away.
ground and put them in the fridge.
Yeah, so I'm going to cut the blooms before they've opened. I mean, when the flowers have opened, it's too late. But when the buds are still nice and tight together, I can slow their growth. Just like every vegetable we put in the fridge, we cut it and we slow its progression. We slow its ripening. The flowers, we're slowing them opening by putting it in the fridge and chilling them. So I'm gonna experiment with this. I know that lots of flower farmers do this, so this is going to be my newest, and that's, you know what, that's what Garden Alchemy is all about. It started with a wildflower lawn that I didn't know how it was going to turn out, and it turned out better than I could have ever imagined. But I was willing to learn from the plants. I was willing to. I talk in the beginning of the book about observation, experimentation, note taking. This idea of you're learning the process by taking some risks,
Yeah.
chaos planting, throwing some seeds out there. So I'm going to cut some flowers. I'm going to put them in the fridge. And then when I have, party to go to, or a friend that needs cheering up, I'll give them a bouquet and they should open at that time. It's really fun. It's so much joyfulness here.
Yeah, right. I wanted to ask you too if you were talking to someone who has never really gardened before and they wanted to start their own, like, raised bed, cut flower garden, what would you suggest a few of the flowers to be?
That's such a great suggestion, or such a great question. If you wanted to do cut flowers, I would say one of the easiest things is bulbs. I mean, bulbs you plant in the tulip bulbs, I planted them all in the fall. And so they provide me with tons and tons of cutting. And you don't follow the spacing instructions that are on the bulb packages. I mean, they're so easy to find in the fall. There's ones you can plant right now. Spring planted summer flowering bulbs make beautiful cutting flowers. So we're talking ranunculus, which maybe is a little bit late. I mean, it really depends on, see, the ones that I'm mentioning might not be so great in Florida, right? Because you just never know. So what I would do is I would check your local nurseries for what they're selling and check your local seed companies, because I love this idea of chaos planting. Prepare the soil inexpensively, buy a few packets of seeds, buy one that says cutting garden in it, and spread those seeds, and what will grow well in your area will grow in your garden without a lot of effort. And then
Right.
you don't have a ton of investment. You can watch that throughout the year and build on it or grow as a gardener.
What are some of the big problems you are seeing as a gardener facing climate crisis?
Well, I mean, we're changing all the time. So the thing is, if you become a garden alchemist, if you spend your time sort of observing your space, we don't go by zones anymore. We don't go by what worked in the past. The climate is changing our gardens so quickly that our little unique microclimate, it could be completely different than it was a few years ago, could be different in different parts of our garden. But there's also, in my book that followed up this one called The Regenerative Garden, I have a whole chapter on climate. And I talk about how we can, again, observe the climate factors that are around us and be able to build structures or systems in order to harness that to make our gardens sort of more comfortable for us and the plants. And an example of this is just simply windbreaks. So every time you do a windbreak, you have basically a 5x factor that it'll protect wind based on the height. So if it's a 5 foot tall little fence, it's going to protect the plants for 25 feet beyond that from wind. So you can see designs of beautiful, like open garden spaces, homesteads that have a line of massive oak trees at the very, very, very far part of the property that make the climate more comfortable for the people who live there and for the gardens because it acts as a windbreak. Or as simple as in the Isle of Man, where they have historically used these things called hurdles, which is a basket woven little mini fence that you put in front of some plants in order to keep them from cross pollinating with each other.
Wow.
So, I mean, really, it's just taking some time to think about what are the climate factors that exist in my garden and how can I harness the energy so that I'm not doing so much work so that it becomes an ecosystem that runs on its own and we use as little energy as possible.
That's great. What do you feel that we can do as community to encourage younger people to be interested in gardening?
Oh, I love that question. You know, one of the things that before I had a child of my own, before I had children, I used to have a front yard garden that had all these fun little things in it. Like I had cherry tomatoes growing and I had ground cherries, which if ground cherries are like these little, they fall off and they're like finding Easter eggs. You pick up the little paper packets and there's a beautiful, delicious cherry to eat in there. Well, ground cherry. And I used to plant things like that in my front garden, and the neighborhood kids would come and just like run around and pick things and really started to be invited. And I thought, this is amazing. The more we can invite children to not stay out of the garden, don't touch the grass, but invite them in for that sensory experience, picking something, tasting it, interacting instead of having sort of a plastic swing set and slide set in your yard, a garden that they can go into and interact with the plants, it teaches them to fall in love with the plants. And if they fall in love with the plants, then they're going to want to protect the earth. So I started working with children, but as people get older, the more we can find ways that it's not about like, you have to do this for the earth. It's easier if we connect with plants and we find the natural way of doing it. Take a breath, find your connection, let the plants do the work, and then we get to have the benefits of that, sort of connection with our plants.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great answer to that because you're right. They have to have their hands in it to know how special it really is. And talking about that, do you mind sharing a little bit more about how you said that gardening changed your life? What ways did you feel that the relationship that you had and the rituals that you were doing with plants, how did that start healing you and changing? Um,
No, like I said, it's no exaggeration because I was working in the corporate world. I was in marketing. I had a great job. I really enjoyed it. But I was going into an office every day and there was this really, a lot of nature deficit disorder. I always kind of felt like I was stuck. I went to this office that was in a executive park. So every day I drove away to a place with very limited nature and plants, and then I went into a building, and then I went into an office, and then I went into a cubicle and sat at a desk and looked at a screen. And I was like, this doesn't seem like what life should be. So something fell off at that point. When I got sick and I started working around my home, I found this real connection to plants. But to be honest, it was the people who welcomed me in. You know as well as I do that plant people are the best people. Friendly, generous, kind, looking for connection with others. When I say I built a connection with plants, I built a connection with plants and the people who love them. So that idea of me doing a garden in my front yard and getting to know my neighbors, that's transformative. That helps with my health and well-being. We think about 2020 when everything was closed down because we were isolating at home and social distancing. A lot of people started working on their gardens because it became almost their water cooler. And I
Yeah.
found all around I have a really great community. I live in East Vancouver, and everybody has sort of these quirky front gardens, and there's a lot of social spaces because people really are very social and community oriented here. People don't just go into their house and then turn on their television. They walk their dogs, they're out with their children, they're, getting a coffee and looking at the garden spaces. So we have all these things that have popped up around the community that are sharing spaces like seed libraries, little free book libraries, but for seeds. We have
Oh,
plant
I love
sharing.
that.
Yes. And so I think the more that we do that, the more connected we feel because we're not, when we get out of our heads and think we're not in control of nature, we are part of nature. And we start to bond with, the bees and the birds and even the squirrels that are digging up the bulbs and eating them, and all the people in our neighborhoods and the plants all together. And it
Yeah.
brings us back to harmony.
Yeah, and this is why I started this podcast. Really, was to have this conversation because I, as well as you, plants changed my life, and that's not an exaggeration. Saved my life. I was a caregiver, and my husband was actively dying when I found plants, and it transformed my life. I mean, I was a 26-year veteran hairdresser, in the thick of it, doing hair, and left that all behind to be a full time gardener because plants changed my life. There's something about using my hands to cultivate growth. I mean, doing hair is such a beautiful thing because you do get to touch people's lives in that way. But as well as you, sitting at your cuticle, I was just like, and I worked in the world of fashion. So it was hyper insensitive. And what does this really mean? Who is this really for? Fast fashion, all of this. What is this, really bringing to the world? And I really questioned, like, I just thought, cannot do this anymore. I have to have my hands in the dirt. So I can relate to that. And I just share with anyone listening too that if you are in that space and you know without a shadow of a doubt that this is what you need to be doing, then take those shoes off and get in your garden, stand in the dirt, be grounded, and take that step to follow your passion and your heart for plants because it is life changing and you can make a career out of it. It's very telling because, especially in this day and age, we have all of this noise, all of this craziness around us. Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand why there are not more people gardening. I don't understand how you go day to day, taking the kids to soccer, sitting in the cubicle without being in nature and connecting, with the earth.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think all of us have different things that keep us busy. Your story is beautiful and heartbreaking and amazing all at the same time. And hopefully, people hear that, like for me, a severe disability, for you going through a ton of grief and hardship, that it can be transformative. And I think that you just really meet the most beautiful people doing this kind of work. It's yeah, it doesn't mean everybody's going to be drawn to it. Some people aren't ready. Like you have been very open with your story, and I've been very open with my story. And so hopefully there's some people, it took me a long time to say that out loud. I've been working on my website, Garden Therapy, and writing books for years under a false name because I didn't want it to be about me. I didn't want it to be about my disability. I just wanted to focus on the positives. And then I realized that it made a lot of sense for me to come out and say, this is what disability looks like. I have a disability. I, have an accessible parking pass, and sometimes I can't walk properly, but I can garden and I have a lot of joy in my life and I work and I write books. And so I live an amazing life. And hopefully that shows people that you don't have to transform everything about you, but there is an opportunity to just start with like one plant and one project that's easy and see if it helps to brighten your day, whether it's like something major or just having a bad hair day. You know those.
Yeah, right. I definitely do. Yes. Some people are just born to have bad hair days every day.
Yeah.
But yes. I do know that. I see these beautiful houseplants behind you. So you are not just, I find this in the plant world, either you're a gardener or you're a plant person,
Yeah.
a houseplant person.
Yeah.
Um, but to have both, and I definitely dabbled in both. So you as well have a love for houseplants.
I do. I do. Yes, I've got like so many. They're
A
all
bird
around me.
nest
But
burn?
but it's not just plants. Like my cupboards are full of herbs and my gardens, like there's sprouts on my counter. There's tulips right beside me that I cut. I painted a picture of echinacea that I keep on my desk. I mean, it's truly, my son said he's 11. And my son said when we moved into this house, he said, "Mom, can we have one room without like flowers in it?" And I'm like, "Probably not." But it's just part of what I like. I think I hear what you're saying about houseplant people are not often garden people. And I think what happens in my perspective from the years of doing this is that if you don't have space, houseplants are a great way to really surround yourself. It's this biophilia. Getting houseplants around you can help change the day and give you that joyfulness of tending to something and
Yeah.
growing. Gardeners, I think, become overwhelmed with houseplants because their needs are so high. And we're used to working outdoors where the sun is doing what our lights do inside, the rain is doing what we have to do with watering, the soil, bacteria, microorganisms, and fungi are building up all the nutrients for the plants, and we have to add fertilizer in houseplants. So a lot of times gardeners are like, hold up, no, those plants are going to die because they take too much work, where we're harnessing the energy of the earth for the outdoor plants.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. What do you see in the horizon? What's next for you? You're writing a book.
Yes, we can say 13th. And I'm because of you and your lucky number 13, I'm writing my 13th book right now. It's amazing. I'm so excited about it. I'm not going to say the title because I'm not sure I'm there yet, but it's Garden Alchemy was all about experimentation, observation, and herbal remedies, elixirs, concoctions for the garden. Then the regenerative garden was taking those ideas of how do we build our own ecosystem in our home garden. So how do we, harness the climate and build community and all these things that we've been talking about. This one is about some of the things that you and I have been talking about. When you were saying fast fashion and all that, it's about how do we reduce waste, build on the sharing economy, continue to use what we have and save money along the way, that we don't have to buy everything brand spanking new, and that we probably shouldn't. So it's more about ethics and the sharing economy and really connecting with our community at the same time. So that one's going to be out in next spring in 2020. Oh my goodness, 2026 spring or
Wow.
late winter or early spring of 2026. And I'm putting some of the finishing touches on it in the next month or so.
What is the process for you when you're writing a book? Do you like to, go to a cabin somewhere or lock yourself away? Is there a process that you do?
I would love that. I keep thinking I'm going to go to a cabin and lock myself away. But honestly, I've built probably the most joyful place I can imagine. My home is filled with gardens, and I can do a project here because I can just go outside and pick up the things. I heard a writer say at one point, or they picked it up somewhere, that the job of any creative is done mostly when you're not doing that work. So the job of a writer is done when you're not writing. I have been writing this book ever since last year. The ideas have been coming to me. It came together, and now it's just the process of sort of putting those thoughts onto paper. I don't like sitting at the computer so much as I like being out in the garden. So I'll do a lot of dictating the words into documents and then editing through there and sort of taking chunks and putting them together. but I definitely don't start at the beginning and go to the end. All
Yeah.
the ideas come together in sort of a bloom, and then we have to organize them and make it so that it has a path for the reader to follow.
Yeah.
So, and I like to do it in the spring because that's a time of new beginnings. So, a lot of times I'll write and have it delivered by June or July. June or July gives me an opportunity to do some of the photography. I do all my own photography for my books, so I get an opportunity when things
Really?
are blooming to do all that. Oh, it's just such a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to just get out there and lie down on the ground and look up at the garden in a perspective you would have never seen and take a photo. I did that
Yeah.
one year when I was writing one of the books. I took a picture of I think it was a poppy, and it had bees flying in it. It was really pretty. But then I lied down on the grass beside it and took a picture up, and there was this bee lumbering out with these huge pollen baskets on her legs. And I I stopped and I looked in on my camera and I ran into the house and I put the SD card into my computer so that I could look at it. I was like, I think I just took my favorite picture of all time. So it's joy. Like I'm never working a day in my life because I love what I'm
Yeah. I'm sitting here gleaming because
doing.
the same. Like, I have my professional camera with me by my side while I'm gardening. I will lay on the ground.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh gosh, hopefully the other staff from the museum is like, what is Wade doing? But we work for a museum, so it's a bunch of arts people, so they get it, they get it. But yeah, there's something to be said about laying down and seeing the perspective of your garden in such a different way. It's so cool.
Yeah, the best tip I ever got for photography was once you've taken your picture, stop and walk around and look at it from a different perspective, and that new perspective might give you something completely different.
Yeah,
And
that's a
every time I feel like every time I do that I see something new. And the thing is, photography is a gift, right? It's not like I'm taking that gift to me. Every time I look at that photo, I feel that feeling of the beauty of something special that only I got to see. I almost felt, the wind of the wings of the bee as and she was working so hard. Like I said, the pollen baskets were so heavy and you could see her just like going. And I just thought, like, what? I got to capture that, but it wasn't about the photo. It was about the moment. And
right.
we get extra moments if we take the time to slow down and look.
Yeah, especially in the garden, like with the insects, but even the blooms, and they change every day, and new blooms happen, and it's such an amazing, amazing thing. What are some of your favorite things to grow?
I really like to grow common herbs that are medicinal. So things that have multiple purposes. So things like lavender, English lavender, love to grow it because you can use it in culinary. You can use it as aromatherapy. It makes a great cleaner because it's full of antibacterial, antimicrobial, antifungal properties, but it smells amazing, helps you go to sleep. You can pick a flower and rub it between your hands and feel instantly relaxed, or you can leave it for the bees. So just like I love to grow herb gardens, rosemary, sage, chamomile, calendula, lavender, like all of those common herbs that have mint, lemon balm. I could go on forever. They have the best properties. Yarrow. Okay, I can stop. But the idea is these common herbs, when we actually spend time getting to know them rather than just like, for example, rosemary, if we have it growing in our gardens, we think of it as something that we add to our vegetable dishes in the fall because it's got sort of that, earthy medicinal little flavors to it that reminds us of fall cooking. But it's also the herb for remembrance, and it helps you with brain fog. So halfway through the day, when you're feeling a little bit like that slump of, 3 p.m., grab a sprig of rosemary and smell that. Don't do the lavender, smell the rosemary, and it'll perk you up. Or again, you can use it as a wonderful cleaner because it's got like that resinous oil in it that acts as a really like can break through some grease. And I like to infuse that into alcohol for a glass cleaner or doing granite countertops or something like that. So, and it's also rosemary is the herb for hair. So you put some in vinegar and rinse your hair with it, and it gives you like this beautiful shine.
Well, and it smells amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, rosemary, if you put it in some infused vinegar, apple cider vinegar with rosemary and other herbs that are great for hair are calendula for people with lighter hair. Rosemary helps with the dark hair for it to shine. Horsetail is a wonderful herb for hair. A lot of herbs are named for what they are. Nettles are great for hair. Infuse those into some apple cider vinegar and use that as a rinse in your hair, and it'll tone your scalp, feels so good, but also makes your hair really shiny, soft, and tangle free. Um, and yeah, add some lavender in there for the beautiful aroma, and the vinegar just dissipates. So it's not like your hair is going to smell like vinegar,
Yeah,
but you do get the herbal, the herbal oils that go into your hair while you're doing this. Then that will have some like really nice aroma.
that's amazing.
If people haven't met me yet, then my goal has been through this whole process of what I do for my work is to try to find ways to make gardening accessible to everybody. And I feel like you can do that through beauty or easy projects or things that make sense through healing and wellness. So on my website, Garden Therapy, I have actually thousands because I started the website in 2009. I have thousands of projects on the website and ideas for how you can get your garden therapy, easy ways to get you outside in the garden and sort of feel all the benefits of that gardening brings you. And if that's a little bit overwhelming, then I do a weekly newsletter. It's called What's in Season, and I pick out one topic in the week and then pick out a number of posts that might sort of stimulate interest. And that's completely free. Sign up for it on the website, and then I just deliver it to people directly.
That's great. And something else that I wanted to bring up is community gardens. If you don't have space in your home or in an apartment, there are lots of community gardens. So definitely check your local area. I know where I live in Jacksonville, there's 3 or 4. So it's definitely super important to look and see, and then as we said too, to get involved with the plant community locally. You will find so much support and love and help, not just in gardening but just in everyday life. I've met the bestest of friends through the plant community, and I'm so glad to hear you say that as well.
Yeah, I think we're going to be great friends, Wade, now that we've met
Right.
each other. Yeah,
Definitely.
that's it. We're friends now because we're the same kind of plant people.
For sure. And if you are ever in Florida, like the Jacksonville area, definitely I would love to give you a tour of the Comer Gardens where I work. We have 3 formal gardens, an English garden, an Italian garden, and the Olmsteads, who did a Central Park, the White House, a park in Chicago. They as well designed um, museum's gardens, and they are stunning. So I'd love to give you a personal tour. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for coming on the Plants by Wadley podcast. I could talk for hours and hours about gardening, but I will definitely for sure have to have you back in the arrival of the 13th book, because I can't wait to hear about transforming the gardens, and then now how are we going to be responsible in how we live our life and take care of gardens around us. So thank you so much, Stephanie. I really appreciate you coming on.
It's been my pleasure. I'm going to hold you to those things. So I'm coming back on the podcast next year, I guess.
Yes.
And if I come to Jacksonville, then I'm
Yes, for
we're in.
sure.
And I extend the same to you. If you come to Vancouver, BC, come to Canada, then I'll show you around.
Yes.
You're
I would
always
love
welcome.
that.